Welcome, guys, to another episode of Consciously Curious, where we deep dive with those that are thriving in their space. On this episode, we learn about music, violin, rapping, with Amanda Bailey, a.k.a. Lil Sharp. You can find her performing around town, but if you have some young ones and maybe put them through Waldorf, you can find her teaching your kids at Waldorf. So welcome to the show, Amanda.
Thanks for having me.
And just to start off, to build some credibility for those that aren't aware of you, how long have you been practicing?
Playing the violin?
Yes.
Since I was 5. So I'm turning 30 this year. You do the math.
25.
Yeah, a while.
Okay, and how long have you been, like, at what point, at 5? So at what point did you start incorporating, like, hip-hop?
Wow. Well,
Who were some major influences?
my sister,
Oh.
definitely. So she and I are 10 years apart. So when I was 5, she was 15.
Okay.
In the 90s, like, you know, we grew up in New York. So the 90s in New York in, like, the hip-hop era was massive. So she would constantly be listening to Biggie, Tupac, Method Man, DMX, like all of that stuff. And I was just like a little kid learning violin by ear. And I honestly feel like because I was learning music by ear and she was playing so much music that I kind of like synced those two things up, and I kind of like grew up listening to a lot of hip hop, listening to a lot of classical music, but kind of always keeping them in like the same space, like as my favorite genre.
Right.
Like they, you know, they're like always.
Did she play the violin herself?
She didn't. She did.
Interesting.
she maybe played for a couple months.
Oh,
but,
okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of how it all started. And then it wasn't until I was a teenager that I saw the hip-hop violinist Miri Ben-Ari perform with Kanye West and Twista. The song Overnight Celebrity is like her maybe most famous song. And, you know, songs had strings on them before, but she kind of took the role as like the hip-hop violinist.
Okay.
And really just, you will hear her on if you hear strings on a track from like 1999 to
her.
2005, it's her.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, like Alicia Keys,
Yeah.
Kanye. I mean, she's worked with everybody.
Yeah. No, it adds... Correct. It has a very like feminine feel to it, and it
The
adds
violin?
right, and so it adds maybe some contrast to the hip hop space.
That's
It's
a
very
good way of thinking of it.
contrarian.
Yeah.
But they complement each other at the same time.
Mhm.
It's unique and it's something. It's fresh. You don't really typically hear these things
Yeah.
complement each other.
But when you do, it's like completely new element. You know?
Something that also comes to mind is like the first time I heard like a sexy saxophone on like EDM music. Like I'm like, whoa,
What's going on here?
A real I'm just kidding. Okay, so who got you into this space, into the string space? Was it thrust upon you with your parents, or someone was like, you just like picked it up?
Actually, so when I was about 5, I think I was watching PBS, and there was a violinist performing, which I now know was Itzhak Perlman, one of the best violinists alive. And he has these incredibly fat fingers. And I remember they did a zoom in on the show of his fingers, and they were just like vibrating, which is something that like most of my students want to be able to do. Like when you see a violin being played and they're doing this thing with their left hand, you're like, what is that and how can I do it?
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I felt. I was watching this like zoom in of this massive hand, and I was just like, oh my God. And I remember running upstairs and being like, Mom, can I play the violin?
Oh, at that, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is before you started playing.
Absolutely, yeah. And it just kind of hit me. I was just like, I need to do this thing.
Wow.
And I honestly think she had been waiting for my whole 5 years for me to say that. And she was just like, yes.
Did she play?
No. No. Neither of my parents
What?
are very musical. Sorry, mom and dad.
But maybe not in the playing sense, but did they listen to a lot of music?
Yeah. They were always playing music. My mom loves classical music. My dad loves the Cranberries. It was great. So they always had music on in the house, and I think she signed me up for violin lessons like that day or the next day. You know, she was like, "Okay, you want to do it? We're doing it." So, I was very lucky.
Did you think about any other instrument at that time?
No.
And how did you decide between violin and viola?
Well,
if you knew like
I didn't.
You didn't even know. Okay.
I didn't know. I saw the violin and I was like, "That's it." And I don't think I knew of a viola until, 4 or 5 years after that.
Okay.
And now I do play the viola, but that's like a story of its own.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And how often were you playing, like learning?
I remember taking a group class every week, so that was me and like maybe 10 other little kids. And then I had a private lesson right after that. And then when I was a little bit older, I started taking fiddle lessons.
Whoa.
Yeah, which was so much fun. And yesterday I played a St. Patrick's Day gig, and they asked me to like do some fiddly intros.
That video you just posted, I did not expect Usher to come on.
But I was so excited to get to, like reminisce and play some of these fiddle tunes I grew up with, because that was really like the beginning of my education on violin.
Okay. Did you find yourself, even after class or your private lesson, just not putting it down and just continuing? You just like kept going?
Well, after my first violin lesson ever, I don't know how I have all of these very strong memories. I don't have very strong memories from other aspects of my life, I don't think. But I remember coming home and running to the bathroom and locking myself in and saying, "I'm never going to another violin lesson."
It was bad.
It was so hard.
Oh.
And when you're that excited about something, you don't consider that it might be impossible. And I went to my first lesson and I was like, "What are you talking about?
It went right over your
head. This is the worst."
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure she didn't even let me like hold a violin. It was probably just like.
So that as a teacher now, that probably stuck with you.
Mm-hmm.
How do you play that fine line of being challenging but still welcoming?
That's a great question.
You know?
That's what we all, strive to. We like have this balance that we need to get to keep them loving the instrument and loving music, but also to be progressing.
How big is there a limit to your class size so you can pay enough attention to each student?
I co-teach with a colleague, and so he kind of runs the ensemble in a way, and I sometimes take out kids for like one-on-one time or sections of the orchestra to do that. Sometimes I sit in and play with them. So that's always fun, like when I get to play with them, because, I feel like when you're a kid, or even now, when I get to play with people that are older than me or more experienced, I'm always like, wow, okay, this is what I need to do to get there. And like, it's inspiring. So I hope I hope they feel the same way.
Yeah. But at the same time, you get to see their process, like even if they're younger than you, or less experienced than you, like how are they internalizing everything, and to see where you stand still, like with who's learning everything right now.
Right, exactly.
So after that first lesson, who got you out of that? Who snapped you out of that funk?
I think my mom was like, "You're going to your second lesson." And I said, "Fine." And I went, and it was probably much better than I thought. It's kind of like at the gym, when you think, if you're like lifting weights or something, and you think something's going to be light, and you pick it up like it's going to be light, and it's super heavy.
Yeah.
But then if you do another rep and you're like, okay, this is going to be very heavy, prepare yourself. And then you pick it up and you're like, oh, that's super light.
Yeah.
So it's kind of all mental. Like, so I probably went to that second lesson thinking it was going to be the worst. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do this.
Was it, did you have a conversation with the instructor at all?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I was a baby.
Yeah, I know.
What's a conversation when you're 5?
At what point? No, that's interesting. At what point did you gain any influences?
Well, I think my biggest influence was just like audio recordings of violinists and orchestras, because that was like constantly playing in my house. So that was a really like, you know, always motivating me. And then your teachers are always someone that you look up to, that you want to be more like. Yeah. So definitely that. And then when you're a kid, I think your biggest motivation are the kids around you. Right. So you're like, I'm okay, but like Justin is really good. Oh. And I'm going to be that good. And even though he's like playing a song ahead of you in the first book. Right. You're like, I'm going to do that one day, you know? So I think when I was younger, that was probably my motivation.
At one point, how many hours do you think, if not hours, like years, if you were to still practice full time or learn full time, do you feel like you really got it under your belt, like a solid foundation under your belt?
That's an interesting question, because
And where is that line? Is that line when you can start improvising? Like you said, you know, you prefer to close your eyes, you know, something like that.
Mm-hmm. There's all sorts of landmarks. Yeah. It's interesting for me because I was never a practicer. I know a lot of people who are practicers that really enjoy just taking time and practicing, or they kind of do it in a more frantic way, but they are practicers. And I've kind of always been more of a less is more.
So you felt you were naturally inclined.
Don't tell my teacher that.
You were naturally, you know, there was some natural talent to this. It came naturally to you.
I would like to think so. And I really took like, you know, rehearsals and performances as like, okay, if you can't do it now, then like that goes to show you'd have to put in more work, or, you know. But what was the original question? Oh, when did you think
like landmarks? What was your first notable landmark in realizing I'm making some serious progress?
Oh, well, a couple that I can think of. When I was in 4th grade, I got put into the 5th grade orchestra.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
That was cool.
That
was really cool. Because I felt like a superstar.
4th grade, so you're probably 10, 11. You've been in it for 6 years.
Well, no, they didn't start it until 4th grade. The orchestra.
But you've been practicing.
Oh, yeah.
This whole time.
Exactly. So, yeah, the orchestra started in 4th grade. Everyone was kind of new, and I had been playing for a while. So, yeah, they bumped me up, and I was like, okay, cool, okay. And then I think maybe the next one was probably closer to high school. Maybe I was a freshman in high school when I got into this orchestra that, like, all of my, you know, high school idols were in. And I remember saying to myself, like, if I get into this orchestra, I don't need anything else. Like, I'm set. I'm so happy. And I got in, and I was like, cool, what's next? But
always chasing the next thing. Yeah.
But that was such a satisfying group to be in. They were like, we were all so dedicated. You know how high schoolers get like, they can like really team together, like over sports, or like, you know, they can really like be a team. Right. And that's how I felt like.
It felt communal.
Yeah, very much.
Interesting.
It was outside of school too, so I got to meet a bunch of different people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is it at that point where you felt you can start improvising?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think when improvisation really became a big part of my life. Again, I was in fiddle class, and I had done a lot of like non-classical music.
Yeah.
And then even in high school and college, I was still doing like bands that had violin in them.
Okay.
That weren't classical. But in terms of improvisation, I would say like the last 5 years.
From now.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really picked up. And it's always there. but you only get certain chances to utilize improvisation. Like, if you're playing in orchestras, you'd never get to use that skill.
Right.
If you're teaching, you don't always get to. I incorporate improvisation in all of my lessons.
Right.
So that's, I give my kids a chance to do that weekly, but I don't think I ever had that opportunity when I was
So it was just
learning.
on your downtime, on your own time? Were you still, how much of the hip hop were you incorporating at that time?
In what time?
Into your violin, into playing violin. Like, at what point did you I want to mix these two worlds?
Yeah. I think from when I was 13 and I saw Miri Ben-Ari mix them, that was the catalyst. And I didn't have the chance to do it,
like it
until I had graduated from college. Because honestly, what makes violin, hip-hop violin, is not necessarily the way you play it, but it's the music that's accompanying it.
Yeah.
Right? So I might not be playing very differently from like what I just played earlier, that versus a hip-hop track, but it's all because of what's around it. Right? So when I graduated college is when I had the chance to first work with like Vic Mensa, Tokyo, Joey Perp, like all these Chicago hip hop guys. And that's when I first started to be able to like utilize violin in hip hop.
Interesting. But did you ever experiment before them, or that was your very first opportunity to start experimenting with the two worlds?
I think I had like played along with tracks on YouTube and, experimented in that way. I had never like produced a track or recorded myself doing that stuff.
Interesting.
Until a little later.
So then you felt ready? I mean, you obviously made the tracks, but how ready did you feel? Like, how did that dynamic happen? The partnership, the collab?
So,
I guess, like, who reached out to who?
That's a funny story because I was working in Symphony Center.
Oh.
Cold calling people to donate to the annual fund.
Okay.
Do you recognize this voice? Hi, I'm calling today. Anyway, it was a shit job, but am I allowed to?
Yeah.
Okay. But the people that worked in the office were all young musicians.
Okay.
And we had a blast. We had such a good time. And I'm still friends with a lot of those people today.
Okay.
Lily Kay, what's up? Alicia Walter. And we all, talked and shared what we wanted to do in our careers and all that stuff. And Lily Kay was friends with Vic Mensa. And he one day was like, I want strings for my album. And she was like, well, I know just your girl. So she kind of set us up, and he had parts all written, and that's kind of how I got into the scene there.
Okay.
Actually, then I showed up to the studio, and I knew a bunch of people from like other
dope.
places.
Small world. Okay.
Yeah, it is. It's a really small musical world, especially in Chicago. It's like a big community.
Okay.
A big family, Yeah, so that's kind of how I got in, and then if someone's there that hears strings on the track and they like it, they're like, what about mine?
Right.
So, that's kind of how it works.
Interesting.
And that's with everything. If you hear like a dope bass player, you're like, yeah, what are you doing next week?
Okay.
Or a producer or a singer.
Yeah. And so has it gotten to the point where they've given you creative freedom?
Yes.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was a learning curve. Like, we were really young back then, and they, those artists are younger than me, little babies. So, we had a lot of learning to do, but it kind of started with like, this is the part. How do you feel about that? What are you going to do? And now I show up, I set up, and, I listen to the track. I probably run through it like twice.
Yeah.
And then they cut it up and take what they like. And
wow.
it kind of works like that now. But, I still do a bunch of stuff for other people where if we haven't worked together, we might not know each other or each other's styles. So it might still be that first way of like, here's the sheet music. What do you want to do with it? And then maybe from there, after we've gotten that all done, then we'll do like a creative pass where I'm like, okay, let me just,
Riff
put
on
some,
this,
put some stuff on it. So.
Interesting. You mentioned off camera that you've worked with Chance and even gotten to play at SNL several times.
3 times?
3
now.
times?
Yeah.
So can you share what was that like? Going to New York and playing, like, that's bucket list stuff.
What a great thing.
how's you're like, I think you're the 3rd person that came on the show that has collabed with Chance in some capacity.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
There was a magician that, like,
really?
yeah, a mentalist he did tricks a show at his family's
oh my god,
backyard,
that's so
like, birthday
funny.
party.
Yeah, so Chance and I met 5 or 6 years ago now, and I played on Surf, which is this album by Nico Segal, Donnie Trumpet, and that's kind of how we met. And then I forget how that first SNL came about, but I just remember like showing up to 30 Rock and seeing SNL studios, and it's like this tiny space where they make this magic. I mean, I grew up in New York, so I would watch SNL every week.
Yeah.
For the first like 15 years of my life or something,
Right.
And it was just a dream. It was actually a dream. So cool to play there. And now it's old news.
Now it's
I'm kidding. It's still awesome. It's funny because the first one and the second one were both Christmas episodes.
Oh.
And then this last one was a Halloween episode. So I'm trying to just go for the holidays.
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's pretty. Yeah. That and New Year's. Yeah. Do some of that,
Maybe a Valentine's Day show.
Yeah. After high school, did you have any, like, what were your plans? Were you plans to go to art school, any type of college? What did you want to do?
Yes, I wanted to be in a classical string quartet that toured the world and was in residence at a college.
That's in residence at a college. Oh.
Like the teaching artists.
Wow.
At a college. That was my ultimate dream. You couldn't stop me. Oh, that was really it. And, things work out different ways.
What happened? Yeah.
Well, I think finding a group, a string quartet, is really like finding 3 other people to marry. It is such a close relationship. I mean, you're together all the time. You're rehearsing all the time.
Do you have to have a group that applies together? What is that? What do you mean?
Well, not necessarily. But to find 3 other people that you can imagine yourself being professional with. You all have to be on the same playing level. You all have to, like, vibe together. Yeah, it's really intense. And so there were a couple points where I found 2 other people or like 1 other person, and we were like, we're gonna do this, but it never really worked out in terms of like finding a full group that like could really commit. And that's fine. And so at a certain point, that's actually how I started playing the viola. These other 2 musicians and I were like best friends. We were really gonna do it, and we couldn't find a violist. So I was like, after a certain point, I was like, you know what, guys? I'm the violist. I borrowed someone's viola. We read music every single night to try to jumpstart my learning.
Yeah. Can you quickly explain like the main differences?
Sure. A viola is a little bit bigger than a violin. It's strung differently. It has the strings of a cello.
Oh,
but
so it's deeper.
It's deeper than a violin, but it's actually an octave up from the cello, so it's not the same as the cello. And then the sheet music is written completely differently, so it's in a different clef. So that was the hardest hurdle. So, yeah, every night, these guys were amazing. They just, kept reading with me until I could read. Essentially, it was like I was a baby, and they were just like trying to get me to grow up. And then so we were like, we'll just look for a violinist now, and that didn't work out.
Really?
Sadly.
So you were hoping that it was gonna be easier to find a violinist than a violist. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that kind of put me into like this whole other part of my life where I fell in love with the viola and I just wanted to play it all the time.
Yeah.
And I auditioned for a few orchestras and played viola in those ensembles. And yeah, it was really a great time in my life. And now I play and teach both. And
so did you do the whole did you do the college thing? Or
Yeah.
You did do the college thing.
I went to school for violin performance.
Oh, okay. Was this in New York or here?
No. Well, yes, upstate New York. I went to a state school, SUNY Fredonia, because my teacher, I took a lesson with this woman, Janet Sung, and fell so in love with her teaching style and her playing and all of this stuff. And I was like, I can't go anywhere else. I have to go where you're teaching. And so I studied with her for 2 years. And then she had this meeting in her office and was essentially sat us all down and said, I got a job in Chicago. I'm taking it. And, we all started crying. We were like, you can't leave us. What are we going to do? Like, this is why we're here, is for you. Right. And I felt like I was on Oprah. She was like, but I've made a deal with them and you can all come.
Get out of here. What?
I felt like I'd won the lottery, honestly. We were just like, okay, so we're going to Chicago. And honestly, it was maybe the day before spring break or something like that. And none of us had ever been to Chicago.
Oh.
And so we decided we're all going to squeeze in a car and drive overnight and spend like a day in Chicago. And so that's what we did. And we showed up here and DePaul was the school that she started teaching at. And we showed up and it was their spring break as well. But there was one kid practicing in the practice rooms and I knocked on his door and I was like, hey, we're from out of town. Like, what's this city all about? And he was like, give me a minute. I'm going to call some friends. He put his violin away, and they essentially threw a party for us.
That's Chicago for you.
Man, we had like this rooftop party. I can't remember a better night than that.
Yeah.
With just strangers.
Right.
And,
I know, right? Midwest the best.
Seriously. And that was it for us. We were like, okay, there's no question. Awesome. So we showed up and then we were all friends and we were going to school with these people that we were partying with. And,
that's amazing.
Oh man, it was just perfect. That's amazing. Really.
So post-college, what did you want to do? Was there a time where you're like, was it ever hard to get a gig and you felt like you needed a real 9 to 5? Did you ever hold a 9 to 5?
I've never had a 9 to 5.
Wow.
I've been very fortunate. Yeah, it's just very lucky. I've supplemented with teaching sometimes, with like more teaching or less teaching.
Yeah.
I'm really a performer, so like that's, if I could just travel and play and
You're doing it.
Yeah, it feels great. So when I graduated college, that's like pretty much that start of the next year. I got into an orchestra on viola, and I was playing with that ensemble, and then I started doing a lot of recording sessions. Yeah. So it was kind of like a mix of like this classical job. I mean, that was like my job.
You got paid to be on an orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what a lot of performers are seeking?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. And is it hard to get your foot in the door?
It is. Well, the Civic Orchestra is a training ensemble, so it doesn't pay a full-time salary, but the opportunities that orchestra gets to work with all of the conductors that come through and conduct the Chicago Symphony, they get to play with members of the CSO. They get to work with Yo-Yo Ma. Yeah. So, I mean, even though it doesn't pay a professional salary, you get so many opportunities to meet. You get to meet like 100 people who are your age trying to do the same thing, who are like living in your city. And it's a beautiful connection. Really.
Yeah. I haven't heard much about the CSO strike.
Oh.
What happened with that?
They resolved it.
They resolved it. And what was the issue?
It was the longest strike I think they've ever had.
They weren't being financially compensated, or was it more than that?
It was more than that. I can't remember all of their terms.
And it was the players, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Performers.
Man, I wish I had the list of their.
And what did CSO just justify? Oh, you have all these opportunities to meet these great people, and
well, no, the CSO
doors.
is a different league. You know, they're like the best in the world. They don't need opportunities to like meet other.
No, I know, but like, how did they justify this? The low wages. You know, like why? How did CSO?
I mean, I think it's a little complicated because their wages are not low. They have really great salaries. But I'm not sure that the salary was necessarily their biggest point.
Sure.
I think it was some other things, and that's what I can't remember right now. Yeah, like maybe their time off or maybe their pension. Some other like elements of their.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And so after that, were there any gigs that you went on?
Yeah.
After that ensemble.
Do you know the answer?
I think I do.
Well, it was, I guess, pretty far in the future for fast forwarding. So I was in that ensemble for 2 years on the viola, 2 years I re-auditioned on the violin, and then after all of that, I had a friend approach me, and he was like, I want to audition for this ensemble that plays on cruise ships, which sounds very silly, but it's this program called Lincoln Center Stage.
Okay.
And they're amazing. I mean, it's a partnership for Lincoln Center, this entertainment group RWS, and then Holland America Cruise Ships, and essentially they put together a piano quintet, and the group plays like really challenging repertoire. They play all of the standard Brahms, Dvorak, some Bach. And then they also get to play jazz arrangements, like pop, rock, like a bunch of, but the arrangements are pretty challenging.
Wow.
And meanwhile, you're sailing across the world.
You get paid to travel now.
I mean, okay, so I'm getting ahead of myself. So my friend asked me to audition for the ensemble, and we both got in, but separately.
Yeah.
So he went right away. And it wasn't until maybe 6 months later that I got the call, and I decided to take it. So it was about 4 months, and I think we hit over 50 cities. We started in...
Around the world.
Mm-hmm. We started in the Caribbean. That was our starting point. We did that for a week, and then we crossed the Atlantic Ocean. We wound up in... Rome. Well, we hit a couple places before that, but Rome was our home port. Did the entire Mediterranean.
Oh, that's so
and then
cool.
we went up, and our other home port, our last home port was Amsterdam, and we did the entire Baltic. We went to Russia, Finland,
Did you find yourselves
Estonia.
playing different music in different areas?
Yeah. So the cool thing about the program is that you can add whatever classical music you want. So when we went up to Russia, we were doing the Russian composers, and when we went to Finland, we were doing, Sibelius, and it was great. It's so much fun. It really, again, if you don't have a group that you love, it makes it really challenging.
But you don't know the group before you audition, right?
You don't.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they kind of play matchmaker also, but we got very lucky. I'm still friends with all those guys. So. Yeah, and then I've done it a couple times since. It's really amazing.
I get seasick. Do you get seasick?
Oh, it's a massive ship.
Oh, so no. Okay.
It's like...
I did an Airbnb on a catamaran.
That's completely different. This is like a floating city.
I know.
It's like 13 floors.
Okay.
I mean, it's insane. You don't feel anything.
Okay.
It's like your hotel is moving.
It still felt like a vacation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. I have a bunch of friends doing it right now. They're in Australia, New Zealand, and Argentina.
Wait, what? Even with the
Antarctica.
thing?
Well, okay.
Are they locked down?
Some of them
the
are getting
cruise?
sent home, I think. But
Okay.
ships are not the place to be right now. They're really not.
And so after your stint was up, you didn't continue it? Like what was your phase? Well, even before, like when you,
Yeah.
How easy was it to drop your city life to go do that?
Well, it was fortunate the way it worked out, because I had a Europe tour that I was doing in November.
With a group or with your?
With a group, with my ensemble Mocrep, MOCREP.
Whoa.
Mocrep.org. So we had a little Europe tour canceled. What? Scheduled. It's because everything's getting canceled right now, and I can't get it out of my head. Oh my God. So we went on a Europe tour in November, and then I had like a China tour in January. And then I got asked to do the cruise ship in March for 4 months. So I teach at a school, obviously, and what I did was ask them for a sabbatical for the year, because I wanted to tour and play music and, do all of this stuff. And my school, my supervisor, I couldn't be more grateful for them. They were like, you're a musician, you're teaching our students music, and we want you to be as strong of a musician as you can be. So take that opportunity and do this thing and come back and let's get it. Yeah. And I was like, I'm with you. Let's do it. You know? So
what about home life? Were you dating the husband at the time?
I was. Yeah. It's funny. He came when I got over to Europe. He flew out because it was a good route that week. We were doing
cool.
bunch of Spain, France, Italy, and he proposed.
Oh, that's where he did it.
Yeah, in Barcelona.
Cool.
So that was cool. Good job, Thomas. Yeah. So it's not easy being away. Being a musician and having a home life is always challenging, especially if your musician life includes touring. And if you're in the CSO, you're like, okay, this is my hometown.
Right.
You can stay and play the concerts, but for a lot of musicians, it's a different story. So you juggle it. You do what you can.
Yeah.
He and I are pretty independent, so we're lucky.
Well, I would feel bad to hold someone back. You can't, from living their full life. Mm-hmm. When you're about to perform, do you have a ritual? Is there something that puts you in that flow state to hype you up?
Yeah, shot of tequila.
A shot of tequila. Is there a specific tequila?
Well, I do love a mezcal. No, jokes. Let's see. Well, actually, yeah. I used to get really nervous before I would perform, especially
palms sweaty.
Yeah.
Like Eminem.
My knees were weak and just felt like my arms were heavy, Yeah, especially classical music, like when you're performing and you have a thing that people know and they're expecting you to execute, it's really nerve-wracking. So, what happens with a lot of violinists, especially young musicians, is their bow starts to shake. It's like if you're reading from a script and your hands are shaking.
Yeah.
They can see the paper. So, you get this sound that's like, did I just do that on the air? So, Yo-Yo Ma actually taught me this breathing technique, which I use every time I'm nervous, every time I think I might be nervous, every time I'm going into a situation where I could potentially be nervous, I do these breathing exercises, which is really great. You breathe in for 6 counts and then you hold it for 6 and then out for another 6 and then hold it. So it's like a box. I think of just a square box.
Yeah.
And you're kind of just going around. You do that 4
That's
or 5
actually how
times.
people normally breathe, though, but not for 6 seconds. The holding
is really what calms you down.
Yeah. And just focusing on a singular aspect and letting your mind not be attached to the nervousness or the anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. And that
How many reps do you think you're doing before you're like, okay, I got this?
I'd say minimum 5.
Yeah.
Feels good. That's when you start to be like, I'm a human. I'm ready for this.
And these, so where did the nervousness come from? Was it like a lack of like potentially not meeting people's expectations?
Nerves are a very elusive thing.
They're very...
You can go into a situation
primal.
And be like, I am not nervous. And then your body tells you something else.
No, you're nervous.
Yeah. You thought you weren't nervous? Watch out. Yeah. It's crazy. It's again, like kind of like the weightlifting thing. If you're like, I'm not nervous, then you're like, no. But if you're like, I'm nervous and I'm going to like take this and do something with it, that's when you can really like harness it. But actually, now that I say that, I'm remembering another teacher who I met through one of these, festivals, and I love this. She explained that sound in such a beautiful way. Like the sound that you make when you're nervous, when you have this like this unsure sound, it's very human. And you can take that and make it even more human, like taking that and rethinking of it, thinking of it in a different way, as if, not as if it's like something to just get rid of, but as like, a quiver in the voice or something like that is really beautiful.
Interesting. And,
I think of that a lot as well. It's like,
just like harnessing it, and instead of letting it control you, you control it in a way.
Exactly. And that like can completely change what's going on in the moment.
Do you get any of that these days? Any nervousness?
I'm trying to think when the last time.
Because when I came the other week, last week, you just like fed off the energy of the crowd.
Yeah.
And that was it. I didn't sense
performing.
Any of that.
I love it. I'm trying to think when the last time. See, when I improvise, I don't ever get nervous because, again, it's like you're not expecting a certain thing to come out. You're just there with me, so I can like feed off of
exactly
off of what's going on and react to it. Whereas if you're playing, Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto, you're like, I messed up.
People are there for that. And
I played that wrong. When you're improvising, you cannot play anything wrong.
Okay.
When you play something wrong, I air quoted.
Yeah.
You just convince them that you meant it.
That's
it. That's it. That's what I tell my students. Like you just, I said that
roll with
and
it.
I meant it,
Like,
that's what it is. So it's a lot different. And I feel like even when I'm playing classical music or like, written music, I'm approaching it differently.
Do you prefer one or the other, these singular improv performances or being part of a larger group, being able to like collaborate with other groups?
It's a balance. I really love it all.
Okay.
And to kind of keep it all is sometimes just challenge.
Yeah.
Sometimes a challenge. Because there's only so many hours in the day. So,
right.
I've kind of lately let go more of my classical side, which, I miss it sometimes. So like last week I picked up a classical gig because I was like, I miss it,
Okay.
So you just kind of, you have to be checking in with yourself and being like, what am I loving doing right now? What am I missing?
Yeah.
And what can I do without?
Did you ever feel like it was turning into a job and the passion was escaping you?
Not so much.
Interesting.
Just,
Okay.
If I'm just improvising, maybe I miss collaborating. If I'm just collaborating, maybe I miss playing in it on like playing orchestra music. Maybe, maybe I want to play more string quartets, So I don't think I've ever felt like, oh, I need to get rid of this, but more of like, I want to do more of that. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of self-awareness.
I guess so.
Checking in with yourself. There's a lot of power in performing these hip hop songs that people have come to love. There's a lot of power in nostalgia. What, like, are you working on original content?
I am.
You are.
I am. Album 2020. Yeah, I'm gonna try to release something in the fall. That I've been working on for far too long, and I just have to get it out there.
Yeah.
You know.
But at the same time, it's like, don't want to rush these things either.
Sure. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. The other way is like, you've been sitting on this for forever, and you need to just do it.
But like this whole time, you've been building a brand, the Lil Sharp brand, and I think, what do you attribute a lot of your notoriety from? From the classical side, from the Lil Sharp side, like.
That's an interesting question. I think it all ties in together again, and there's not one thing that I love more than the other thing. Okay. You know, it's really hard to kind of separate everything out, which is why I like, adding classical elements into hip hop music, which is why I like adding jazz elements into classical music, which is like, I think it's all. I love it. So the album that I'm creating is also like reflective of that. So there's gonna be a lot of classical elements, but it's a hip hop feeling album.
What do you think though has attributed to a lot of the brand awareness though? Which performances?
What do you mean by that?
Was it you laying tracks for Vic Mensa and Chance, or is it these one-offs at like the Vig or Bandit?
Well, I love collaborating. So like whenever I get a chance to work with Chance or any of these artists, like I love being a part of their vision. Yeah. There's like a great Chance's musical director, Peter Cottontail, is an amazing artist, and working with him is just like so inspiring to me. Yeah. And Chicago just has such a great scene of people. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's kind of where I get my energy from, and then I bring it to a nightlife scene or like the club, and I kind of like spread it there.
But those are the areas that are most unexpected of your performance. Like the guys that we bumped into, I only came up to them because they were like, are these seats taken? Can we share? Yeah. Can we share? We don't like, just standing. So, and then they came in because they heard a violin.
Really?
That's
awesome.
That was it. And they're like, there's a violin in here. And then
I love that.
And then they stayed because he started rapping.
Wow. That's awesome. I played a gig 2 nights ago, and someone came up to me after I played, and he said, I've seen you play before. I know all of your stuff, blah, blah, blah. Oh. And after the last time I saw you play, I went and I bought a violin for myself.
That's so cool.
And I was like, what? And he was like, I don't know how to play it. I don't know what I'm doing. And I was like, hit me up. I'm going to give you a free lesson. Like, that's beautiful. That is so touching. I mean, it's that someone would like be inspired enough to buy your instrument.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
I was like really touched. So, stuff like that is amazing.
Okay. Yeah. Where else do you think you'd like to take this? You want to do like after the album's out? Are you gonna do like a
Miss
tour?
Worldwide?
Right. Like, what do you want to do?
Yeah, I would love to tour it.
Like, would you like ever want to play Lollapalooza?
That's a great question. The answer is yes, but in what capacity? Because I have a problem sharing my music that I've written, that I've created. I'm like a little self-conscious, I think.
Sharing but when with the world, what do you mean?
Like if it was my album, but if it was your album that I played on, yeah, I would be all in. You know what I mean? It's but
isn't that part of what the tour is going to be? That's the tour.
Yeah, but my album is me.
Yes.
Your album is you, and I'm on it. it's like a different.
So what do you mean? So what would the tour entail if you're not sharing your own album?
No, it would be that.
Your album.
Yes, but like playing Lala,
How is that different from?
it's different.
It's different. Isn't everyone else playing their own thing?
Yeah.
So what's different? What do you mean?
I think I'm just self-conscious of my stuff.
Self-conscious. Yeah. Interesting.
I don't know. Because I'm a violinist, and I'm a vocalist, and
isn't that something we need more of?
I
In the
I do think so.
In the Lala space.
I do think so, but it just takes a little time for me to come around to it. So.
Do you think that's what's holding you back with producing this album?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you put it out in the world now.
There it is. October 2020.
No shit.
We'll see. It's in the world. I can't get rid of it now.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's where it's at.
What, like, ideally, would you want to just all perform and not, or how much teaching do you love doing?
I love teaching.
You love teaching?
I really do. My kids are great.
What age?
8 to 18.
So it's a lot of like when you first started.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I teach an improvisation class.
Okay.
In the high school. They're great. We get to experiment with a bunch of weird stuff. And then in the grade school, I do the orchestra program, and I have a bunch of private students. So I think, if I had to pick, I would definitely keep my private students because I feel like we have such a personal connection.
Okay.
Obviously, I would love to tour more.
Yeah.
It's a hard balance, especially when you have, so many things to juggle in terms of your personal life. And, touring is not easy. It's challenging, but it's so rewarding.
What would be your ideal stage?
In the world, like a performance? Wow.
I guess not stage, but I mean with that, the crowd, right? What type of crowd do you think you'd want to perform for?
Where does Anderson .Paak play?
Tiny Desk?
Yeah.
You want to do Tiny?
Yeah,
Let's do
it's
a
Tiny Desk. Yeah, let's do that's it. Man, I've been so close to playing Tiny Desk 5 times.
Oh.
This close, 5 times. I'm gonna get.
What do you got to do to make it happen? Where are they? Is it Chicago or where?
No, they're in New York.
New York. Where? So okay. So.
Oh, or DC. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I thought New York.
And just schedules weren't lining up.
No, it's just it's been different situations with everybody. I've almost gone with a couple different.
Oh, okay,
people. Okay. But yeah, no, that's up next. That'll be cool.
That's so dope. That's so sick.
Yeah.
Can you let's jam about this whole Corona issue.
Wow. Well, I'll just start by saying it's a crazy time.
Yeah.
And shout out to everyone who's making it work, because none of us really know what to do.
Right.
But I do think it's going to be a creative time, and that's exciting. How are we going to, come together when we can't come together?
Yeah.
That's so insane to me. I'm trying to have rehearsals on Skype, and I had someone hit me up today. I was telling you, but she's putting together a beautiful piece that people from all over the world are playing it at the same BPM, in the same key, the same tuning, and wearing the same thing, and she's gonna splice it all together. So we can kind of feel like we are together, even though that's not possible right now. And I think really beautiful things like that are gonna be coming out of this.
Right.
But in the meantime, it's really gonna be a struggle financially for a lot of people. A lot of people who have had tours canceled, big gigs.
Right.
They're just not. They can't happen right now. And, even for a big tour to be rescheduled later, that's fortunate, but maybe it pushes something else out.
Right, to keep the money still there. Right.
Yeah, so, I think a lot of us are relying on you know, maybe people who have salaries or can support the arts right now to, you know, buy merch, buy CDs, buy, you know, like.
But, and then we also talked about, you know, this is a luxury to be able to record a podcast. Things like merch and we talked about a tattoo convention, like all these things. When you think about, you know, not that the world is ending, but if the world was ending, like what really matters? Like,
exactly,
you know, food and your health, you know, and it's tough when you want to support the artists and the performers, and everyone's kind of got to be it's tough. You got to look out for yourself, but you got to be communal as well. It's like this is all we have is each other. So
exactly.
Maybe I don't know. It's maybe those that have gigs can, hey, you want to come on with this gig? I don't know. It's like where do we?
Yeah.
In what ways do we come together?
It's definitely going to be like a brainstorming process, you know?
Yeah.
I think there's some really creative things coming out of it. And I'm excited to kind of see where that goes and how that sticks. You know, like after this is all over, what of this time, like, you know, this time that we can't be together, like we're creating alternative concert spaces, like we're you know, teaching kids from afar, like what of that is going to stick later down the road? Like, are we still going to keep doing that? Right? Or are we going to build on that?
You do it and you find out that it's super successful. And
and I think that's exciting. I do. You know, I hope it doesn't eliminate things that we find dear, like live music. Like, please keep live music around, you know, but, you know, maybe it'll open the door for other types of performances and stuff like that.
Damn. What else are you most excited about in 2020 besides this album?
Oh, God, it's hard to think about 2020 right now.
So much
it has not been cool. My birthday's coming up.
Oh, snap. Dirty 30. Big 30, huh?
Yes. I'm ready. I'm here for it.
How are your 20s, if you were to reflect?
Oh, 20's sick. 20s are great. I feel like 26 was really my year. I can't remember what happened.
That's where you blossomed?
I think so. Who knows?
What do you attribute it to?
Just feeling more confident.
Okay.
Knowing, like, when you're a kid, you have a lot of ambition, but not a lot of knowledge. And then kind of like in your mid-20s, you're like, I can do it. Like, I have the capacity and the means, and, like, you know, I know more people, and I am good at my craft, and, you know, then you can, like, start making moves on that stuff that you had wanted to do but couldn't. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what 30s hold.
Interesting.
Like an old fart now.
You do not feel old.
No, I don't feel old. No, I don't know if I'll ever feel old. Yeah, my gigs are still midnight to 2 a.m., so I still gotta stay young.
So is there any part of you that feels like you'll eventually settle?
In the back of my mind, but really in the front of my mind, I'm like, what's next? Like, what are we doing? Where are we going? You know, I'm just like always. You warned me about that.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm always like hungry for the next thing. So
yeah. So with that, but like I feel like you're definitely enjoying the present moment, but I also sense that you're never maybe satisfied, or you're always looking for more.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, you could be the type of person who's never satisfied and, like, just wants the next thing. Yeah. But I want the next thing and I'm satisfied, which is a funny combination. Like, you know, I've been in Chicago for 10 years, and maybe a move on the horizon. Maybe.
To where? What, are you and have you been to the West Coast?
Oh, yeah, I hate LA.
You hate LA. Well, it doesn't have to be LA.
The West Coast is beautiful. What a beautiful part of the world, but I have a couple different places in mind.
You mentioned Mexico earlier.
Oh, I did, yeah. Just moving it back, pick it all up and move. But when I think about moving, it's not because I'm not satisfied here. I love Chicago. I love the people. I love what I'm doing, and it would be so hard to leave.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want to like deny myself other experiences and, maybe.
Do you feel like you'd be giving up some of your personal life to pursue this? Or do you think your personal life would just come with you?
It'd come with me.
Oh.
Yeah, we're taking it. Yeah.
What advice would you give for new students coming in to get over maybe the early frustrations, the early humps?
It's a great question. Because that's real. Like when you start anything new, a language, an instrument, sport, I don't know, I don't do sports. When you start something new, you have all of this energy around it, around what it's going to be. And then you see how difficult it can be. And those two things are really hard to juggle. So I would say as much as you can keep the playfulness. So for young musicians, tiny musicians, just playing. It doesn't matter what comes out.
Yeah.
If they're able to make any sound, it doesn't always, yes, technique is important. Yes, we have things in place that to be a good musician, you must check off these boxes, but never lose that excitement.
How can they be playful if they're if they can't even put notes together yet? Or
that's okay.
That's okay.
No, they don't have to be able to put notes together. You just put the bow on the string, wiggle it, Maybe you don't have a bow. Maybe you just strum it, like a guitar, and then you put some fingers in places and just kind of play around and see what's coming out. And that's what I do with I picked up a flute last week for the first time.
So how is that? Because I took a jujitsu class 2 weeks ago for the first time.
Nice.
Being brand new at another field or another industry.
Yeah.
What was the flute like?
Well, I almost passed out. I swear. I was on it for a minute and I was like, oh, wow, this is something else.
Are you passing out? Because I'm passing out.
Seriously. But, my friend actually gave me a flute to play for a little while. So I've been just picking it up. Anytime I walk past it, I pick it up.
Oh, good for you.
Which is a funny thing because I'm getting better at it without even really practicing it. I just pick it up. And before I didn't really in this span of a week. I couldn't get a sound until I had been holding it there for a minute or two. And now I walk past it, I pick it up, and I can make a sound right away.
Wow.
And that's, you have to just recognize improvement or acknowledge improvement wherever it is. And that's a stupid small improvement, to a flautist.
But it's enough, to give you a little boost in momentum.
Exactly. You're like, okay, I can make a sound.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm only playing one note. It's an F. But that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm like a young violinist.
Yeah. You spoke on learning a language.
Mm-hmm.
Playing an instrument is a language.
Mm-hmm.
What is the language of music done for you? I don't know. Has it opened, do you conceptualize the world in a different way? And you're learning Hungarian as well, right? So are you able to see the world in a different perspective? Cause
it's hard to say because I've always played music.
Yes.
Right?
But is it different from just someone who just speaks English? Is it a different lens? It is a different lens. But in what way, Do
you play music?
I played violin for 2 years, starting 4th grade, and then I moved, and then I should have kept up with it.
So, I don't think you have a more narrow scope of the world. It's an interesting question because even though you don't play music, you do so many other things that supplement different views. Even if you only speak English, maybe you have like a higher concept of, science.
Mm.
So I'm not exactly sure how to answer the question, because yes, it is definitely a new lens, but I'm trying to think,
it's just another opportunity to relate to someone, I guess, like you, it was the New York subway, right? Where
Berlin.
you like Berlin. I'm sorry. Yeah, you told me this before. Berlin. And you were able to just like, they were like, here. And you're like, okay. And then you start ripping on it.
They spoke a tiny bit of English. I speak no German. Or I think they were Iranians. I don't speak.
It's just like the Berlin subway.
Yeah. I was in the subway in Berlin and I saw this incredible group of guys playing like Middle Eastern music. And I just went up to them and I was like, you guys are amazing. Yeah. I play the violin. Like I said I play the violin as like I'm a musician and that's, I'm giving you my thumbs up. Yeah.
Right.
So
and then they're like, play?
He just like shoved his violin at me and was like, play. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. You guys start it off and I'll come in and improvise. And they were like, no, you start it.
Oh, shit.
And I was like, okay.
Okay.
So I don't know. I just played something. It's funny because the violinist and I had completely different styles. He's like a crazy improviser. He's like,
wow.
And I came in like slow and steady, just like, and they just like jumped in and we jammed for, I think the train was like 10 minutes away. We jammed for like 10 minutes. And I didn't even get their names or anything because the train came and I just shoved the violin back in him. I was like, I love you guys.
Wow.
Yeah. It was wild, but exactly, like connecting with people, not being able to really speak the same language, which, is a reason that maybe I feel like I could move a number of places, because as a musician, you just connect and can perform. You don't necessarily, of course you need to know a language if you live in another country, but yeah, maybe there's more opportunity there.
Is there a bucket list of dream artists you would like to collaborate with?
Oh, definitely. Lizzo, what's up?
Oh.
I play the flute now.
No shit. F.
Yeah, Anderson .Paak, Frank Ocean, Itzhak Perlman, what's up?
Childish, if Childish was still around. Yeah.
Damn.
What I went over before, I'll do it now. Ask it now. Is how do artists get these gigs? Do you have a management company?
I do, yeah.
Right? Is that required? Do you feel like that's required?
I don't. No, okay. He my management company, Trouble Monsters, they're amazing and they book all my nightlife stuff. I love them. Couldn't be more grateful for like that aspect of my career, but there's so many aspects and I feel like a lot of it is word of mouth, friends, just connections you make from going to jam sessions, being a good person.
Yeah,
like, and it does. And I have friends all over the world that I could just be like, hey, I'm in Iceland for a couple days, like, you got anything? And hopefully Frank hooks it up or whatever. But yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest like the most work I've ever gotten is because of friendships and connections like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so for the rising artist, how do you go about navigating getting gigs then? If they aren't managed?
Well,
is it door to door? Is it like social media?
Actually, social media is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And I met you on Instagram.
Shout out Emma.
Yeah. And just the connection that can happen there is so awesome. I'm teaming up with a beatboxer. He's not a beatboxer. He's a rapper. I was thinking of someone else. And we're gonna collaborate and do some stuff. So that's like kind of the new era of connection. But I feel like the old fashioned way of just like, oh, you have a project, I'm happy to work on it. is a great way to go. If you're a classical musician, just trying to audition and getting the word out that that's what you are about. Like, you know, people just want to know, if I think of this, if I think of classical music, if I think of a string quartet, who comes to mind? So if you're, you know, if you're really about like chamber music, let people know that. And then when they have that gig or they want to put an ensemble together, you're the person that comes to mind.
Yeah. What was it like being in the presence of Yo-Yo Ma?
What is it like every time? He's an amazing person. Even this past time, I've spent a lot of time around Yo-Yo, and he never, ever ceases to inspire me. Being in the same room with him is inspiring.
Without him playing?
Yeah, I mean...
What is it like? What is it about it? Like that he carries himself? Like what is it?
It's funny because I saw him 2 weeks ago, and the day after that I taught my improv class, and
wow.
I kind of posed the question to them, who or what inspires you, and what can you do to be an inspiration to somebody else? Because every time I see Yo-Yo, I feel like I need to be a better person.
Okay.
A better, not better. I need to keep going. I need to do it further. You know, I'm fine where I'm at, and I want to grow and improve.
Yeah.
And, you know, I feel like that comes from, I mean, he's honestly one of the best, most famous classical musicians in the world, or to ever have lived. And he sees you, and he says, "Hey, Amanda, how's your album going?" And you're like, "How do you remember that?" And then he goes to the next person. He says, "Are you writing that book that you wanted to write?" And they're like, "Yeah." He's like, "You got to finish it," you know? Or like, "Hey, how are your kids?" You know, it's like he cares. This capacity, to care about everyone.
You think someone of that caliber is like too focused on their own work?
Not even focused? Like, how do you have that much capacity for other people?
That and then especially with such a large management team around them.
It's insane.
That he's still,
It's really beautiful, and like, you know, just that somebody cares about you like that is really, it makes you want
someone that you look up to.
It really makes you want to push and you know.
And so how can you frame someone that you are inspired by and not let it be someone that you're chasing, I guess? How can you're always, I guess, being the better version of yourself instead of constantly comparing yourself to someone else.
Right. And you're working together.
Yeah.
It's a partnership.
Wow.
You know, it's not, I mean, it's also a mentorship, but I think once you frame it like we're working together, it changes the goals and how you feel about.
Is that how you frame you and your students?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're all working together.
Are they like what are your thoughts on like competition? Is it like when you're like, "Oh, this kid's like one song ahead of me." Right? How do you not let that consume you?
Me? Or my kids?
Both. Like if back in the day, like if you were to use, come from that train of thought, or your kids these days, what do you try to remind them?
Well, that's a cool question, because I have that situation with some of my kids, but they might be working on different things. Maybe one is working on a piece that's more in the future in the book, but that doesn't say anything about, it doesn't say a lot about their level. And maybe one student is a little further behind, but we're improvising at like an amazing level, I have some students that can't, they're weaker at note reading, perhaps, but they have an amazing ear. Or, they are shy and like improvising is really hard for them, but if you give them some music, they can kill it, and they're just like bam, bam, bam,
Wow.
And so it's really like playing to their strengths.
Okay.
So I don't think that where you are, quote, like where you are in a book or like, how strong X is or Y is, I don't think that says everything about you as a musician. You can be a great musician in a number of ways.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, there's no linear path to being great.
Mm-hmm.
There's no linear path. Okay.
No linear path. Is that the quote?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's all I had.
Oh, that's all you had?
That's all. I mean, is there anything else you want to put out into the universe?
No, I could sit here all day.
Damn.
This is great.
Yeah, I learned a lot about you. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was really fun.
Where can people find you hanging out? So on Instagram at Lil Sharp, LILSHARP.
Raps.
Raps. Sorry, thanks for including that.
Lil Sharp Raps. That's my Instagram. That's my Twitter. I don't use Twitter, but if I were to, that's my handle. You'll see things on there every now and then. I got a Facebook. I got a website.
Wait, and where can people physically find you hanging out? What venues do you usually play at?
Well, on the weekends, I'm always at a club. I play with DJs on the weekends.
Oh, I didn't know that. What?
Yeah, that's where you saw me at
I
Bandit.
guess that makes
Yeah,
sense.
like DJs are going.
I'm thinking like nightclubs, like a real like.
Oh, I am at a few nightclubs.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
okay.
I've played Prism, which is a sick place. Bodega, which is a hidden nightclub, so DM me for the guest list. Oh. And Bandit and the Vig. So you can catch me all over the city, really.
Interesting. Amanda, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Guys, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Stay curious. Habla aloha.